Welcome to the first episode of the Corner 3 here on Pittsburgh Sports Live in the Beaver County Auto Studios. I'm Cale Berger, Alan Saunders with me, and who will join me every week, and a rotating third guest every week. And on the first episode, it is our good buddy Craig Meyer from the Post-Gazette. Thank you for joining us, Craig.
Thanks for having me.
So, obviously Pittsburgh is not really seen as a basketball town, but we felt here at Pittsburgh Sports Live that there was a basketball-starved fan base here in Pittsburgh that really is craving for some good quality basketball content. So we decided, hey, why don't we fill that need? So, we're going to be talking college hoops, broader college basketball, but a lot of Pittsburgh college basketball on this show. Talking a lot about the NBA as well, and kind of just talking all things hoops. Coming at you once a week. So, guys, without further ado, I think we should get things started here. I want to talk about some of the local college teams and how they're just starting their season. Some teams have played one game so far. Others haven't played any in the case of Duquesne. But I want to kind of get an idea of what they did last season, who's returning for them, and kind of what we expect from these teams going into the season. So first off, I want to start off with the Pitt Panthers. Obviously, we're all three are very familiar with the Panthers. New head coach Jeff Capel. There's been a lot of buzz around that, obviously. Panthers 8-24 last year, 0-18 in ACC play. So clearly, a lot of room for improvement. Some key losses they had: Marcus Carr, Parker Stewart, both transferring the program, but they bring in some great guards in Xavier Johnson, Trey McGowans, and Malik Ellison finally eligible to play. So, Alan, we'll start with you. I mean, what are your kind of expectations, and what have you seen so far in their first two opportunities to see them play?
I think expectations for this team are actually really tough because they obviously have talent, but they're also really young. I think they're probably going to be inconsistent just because when you're playing 2 or 3 freshmen 30 minutes a night, it's going to be hard for them to be consistent. And so I think it's really hard for me to get a real good feel about the expectations. They're definitely a lot more talented. Another coach asked me, what did Pitt look like? And I said, well, it was kind of AAU basketball sometimes. There's clearly a lot of talented kids there. There wasn't necessarily a lot of, really detailed play. So I don't know. I mean, the ACC is so tough. I think they're probably going to struggle in the ACC, but this non-league schedule looks like it should be pretty easy.
Yeah, I mean, there are really only 4 games on that non-league schedule that I look at and think that there's a reasonable chance that I could see them losing. And one of those, one of those is going to be against Duquesne, a team that we're going to talk about later that has promise, but there's still some kind of mystery around them. So you talk about them, but I feel like they're going to come out of non-conference play with probably, I would say, the bottom of my reasonable expectations would be 9 wins, which you would have already surpassed last year's total. And then I think when you get into ACC play, that's where I'm really intrigued to see what this group does. If we talk about the inconsistency with newcomers, you can sort of see some of those high school habits already, where for a guy like Xavier Johnson or Trey McGowans, where they blow by their defender, then they get to the basket. In high school, maybe there was nobody waiting there for them, and they could blow by pretty easily. Obviously not the case in college, even against a team like Youngstown State. But I'll be intrigued when you get into ACC play when it's every single night where if one of those guys or multiple guys are having an off night, which just naturally happens as a freshman, where you hit kind of a wall even. Where when you're playing against a really good team like that, even a team that's maybe more toward the bottom of the conference, there's a good chance you can not only lose but get beaten pretty badly. So I'll be intrigued to see what they do once they get to that point.
I also think they have the talent to have some of the games that I just think last year's team never had, where you just have a game where you shoot 63% from 3 and kind of everything goes right and you beat a team that you shouldn't. Maybe you don't I think they have a better chance of those games happening too. So I don't know, but really it's not like you can sit there and go down the ACC schedule and say that any of those games are games that they should win, right?
No.
Is there anybody that maybe Wake? I don't know.
Wake, I would say Wake, Georgia Tech maybe, and Boston College, I think, are games that are
they're winnable. But like, I don't think there's any.
No.
Will they be favored in an ACC game?
Probably not.
Not unless they start winning some.
Especially because Wake and Georgia Tech are both on the road, as is BC too. So their 3 easiest games all come on the road, and that was my thing too. I was thinking of how many wins this team might have in ACC play. I saw them like 2 or 3. But the thing is, it's one thing to project that, but it's another to go down their schedule and see like, oh yeah, I think they can win that game and that game and that game. As you had mentioned, there isn't that one game on there. There are 2 that I think that they have a much better chance than the others, and I think there are some vulnerable teams in the middle too. I mean, I don't know how good Louisville will be. I don't know how good Notre Dame will be. I mean, I'm sure both have good coaches, both are good programs. They probably won't be bad, but. I'll be
Miami. I think has come down a bit.
Yeah, I mean there are definitely some in there. It's a deep conference. It's really good at the top. You're the top 3 teams in that league between Duke, Carolina, and Virginia. I mean they're all top 10 teams.
Do we have like 8 seconds here to talk about Duke? Because holy crap!
Oh, definitely, yeah. Very, very impressive. Zion Williamson and R.J. Barrett and those guys are definitely as good as advertised.
And the thing is, like, we may look back on that game even in a week where Kentucky's played a couple more teams, be like, oh, Kentucky's really good too.
Yeah.
Duke is just that
But
good.
they made Kentucky look like an 8th grade basketball team.
Yeah.
I mean, and hey, I mean, Kentucky's consistently struggled at the beginning of seasons, but it seems like Duke is not experiencing those early season struggles at all. They seem to be, hitting at full speed to start the year.
I was wondering, do you think Jeff Capel, after their game on Tuesday, just went back home, turned that game on the TV, had like a glass of wine or a glass of bourbon or something, and had a cigar in his hand, just sat back and was like, I did this.
Oh, I definitely think he did, because, I mean, he's expressed many times the great relationships he has with those former players that he recruited at Duke and past players he had, whether it was Oklahoma or wherever he's been. He loves watching those guys and seeing them succeed, and I think definitely he's watching that and saying, all right, I did it at Duke. I want this to happen at Pitt. I think that's what his vision is. Remains to be seen if he'll be able to do it, but I think that's what his ambitions are. For this Panthers program.
Maybe the relationship will mean that Duke will take it easy on Pitt and not win by 85.
We'll see. Maybe Zion. Maybe Zion will decide to rest. But last thing on Pitt here. I mean, I kind of agree. I think I'm saying 3 to 4 wins in the conference. I think they'll take care of business in the out of conference schedule. But I think the biggest thing for this team, I mean, they're really going to struggle on the offensive and defensive glass. Really going to struggle trying to protect the rim. Just everything in the paint with regards to big men. But I think this team has a lot more athleticism than they had last season. And that's something that in college basketball will win you games. I mean, Syracuse last year won games strictly because they were more athletic than other teams. And you'll be able to get easier shots. You'll be able to be really difficult to score on defense. And I think that the newfound athleticism that they have now, I think is really going to help them a lot on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot to be said from even just these 2 very limited glimpses that we've gotten. I talked to you guys about before we went on air here, but we're based on what we've seen so far in those 80 minutes. 40 of them didn't technically count, but of what I saw as Pitt's 5 best players, 4 of them were not playing last season. 3 of them were not even on the roster. 2 of them were juniors in high school. Like it's very impressive so far what Jeff Cable's been able to do, the influx of talent who he's been able to bring in. It's even at this point, it's very clear that this program is in a much better spot than it was 8 months ago.
For sure. Well, moving on to the Duquesne Dukes. Last season, 16-16, 7-11 in the A10 under Coach Keith Dambrot. And, guys, this is a team that has lost some players from last year's team. Terrence Smith, Rennie Castro-Kennedy. Guys, they're really big contributors for Coach Dambrot. And they bring back some big pieces as well in Mike Lewis, Eric Williams, and get some key transfers as well. So what is our kind of outlook for the Dukes this season?
It's a lot like Pitt. It's all due. I mean, in fact, they have more new players. They only have 2 guys, Mike Lewis and Eric Williams, that were regular contributors last year. They're going to play this year. That's a kind of a guard and a wing, and so I think they have a better idea what they have because they had so many. They had 5 guys that were ineligible transfers last year. Now I think only 4 of them ended up coming through to this year's team, but I just feel like Keith Dambrot has to have so much of a better idea of what he's working with those four guys compared to Jeff Capel, who's got a new coach, and they're all new guys to him.
Yeah.
And I think Duke, looking at that Pitt non-conference schedule, I think Duquesne's going to end up being one of the better games on it. I mean, after West Virginia and Iowa, I think Duquesne's a top half of the A10 team for sure, and I think it's going to end up being a really good game for Pitt. They've got some interesting players that are. It's funny. It's the Pitt freshmen are all guards, and Duquesne has like 5 freshman centers.
Yeah. Maybe we can work out a trade or something.
They've got, let's see, Bizzo, Rotroff, Swingle. I think they have 5 freshmen that are 6'10" or bigger. Now they're not all going to play. Obviously not all going to play at the same time, but that would be interesting. That would be fun. Pitt goes 4-1, and Duquesne plays Mike Lewis and 4 7-footers.
It would be interesting. It would be definitely interesting to watch.
Just zag where others zig. We hear about how basketball's changed, how it's all guard oriented, 3-point oriented. I'm waiting, especially in college. Somebody's going to bring out the old big man lineup. It needs to happen.
You know what? Gavin Bizzo is I think he's a 6'11" guy from Indianapolis area. He can shoot the 3, which I don't know how much he's going to play. He's still really. I was at Duquesne practice on Wednesday, and he's a skinny guy. Obviously still needs to bulk up a bit, but I think that's a weapon that, man, if you have that at the A10 level, like there's not a lot of teams that can defend that. But I think they're going to be inconsistent too. It's the same thing. It's a whole new team, all new parts, bunch of freshmen playing. And their non-conference schedule is a bit tougher. I mean, they have some legit games in there. So I think it's interesting because last year I didn't think their team was very good, but they were old, and I think you saw that when they went on that run in the non-conference schedule that really started like capture some momentum and people started paying attention to them. Is they were just an old team in non-conference beating teams that either weren't very good or were good but not yet experienced, not yet together. I think they had it was Castro Kennedy Smith, Jordan Robinson. They had a grad transfer in Chaz Brown. So that's 4 guys that were either 4th or 5th year players in the regular rotation. That's a big deal. I mean, you get old in any college sport. That old is its own good. It doesn't matter how talented you are. If you have 4th and 5th year guys, especially at the beginning of a long season, I think that's a huge deal. So I think that's going to be different. I'm not sure they're going to dominate the non-conference schedule like they did last year. No, but they may end up better at the end of the season.
No, and you were talking about last year too. I mean, that was one of the. I think Bill can talk some about the relative weakness of their non-conference schedule. That was one of the things that impressed me with Keith Dambrot last year. He was able to coax something out of that team and out of certain players that even when I covered the team in Jim Ferry's final years, like I just didn't see that. Like the Rene Castro I would see last year. His first year back after transferring from Butler, he was a guy who you would see in the summer league. Obviously take that with a grain of salt. It's kind of playground basketball, but who he just looked. He didn't have any explosiveness. He looked a little lost at times. And then last year, he turned him into a really productive player. I mean, I thought Terrence Smith got better. He was able to make guys who maybe struggled some and were inconsistent under Jim Ferry, made them serviceable. And I think as you look at the team now, Alan, you would know much better than me, covering them. But I mean, the thing I always remembered hearing last year was just, and these would be from people who would be at practice, so it wouldn't just be coaches saying it. That they would be like the transfers playing against the team starts. It wouldn't even be close. Like the guys who were sitting out would just run those practices. And I think it's in a spot now where. Where you can pair that with a guy like Mike Lewis, who's obviously proven himself to be a good Division I player, a guy who was overlooked by bigger players because of his height. And I think you have the makings of a team. It's a team in a program that I think has an opportunity because the A10's not what it was. Shaka Smart's gone, Archie Miller's gone, Dan Hurley's gone now. So I don't think that you have that impenetrable upper tier in that league. Yeah. I think there's room for growth for a program like Duquesne.
Yeah, I think there's really definitely opportunity for the Dukes in the A10, and I think they're going to go where Mike Lewis and Eric Williams go. I mean, Eric Williams, he really he's a Division I body, and he has the potential to be a double-double guy this year, 14-9 last season. And like you said, Mike Lewis, he's just been overlooked, and he has that chip on his shoulder, and he's such an underrated player, I feel like. And I think with all these transfers finally getting an opportunity, I feel like Duquesne's going to be sneaky good and going to have an opportunity to really challenge for the A-10 title and, make something happen because of, like we said at the beginning, is having those guys have a year to feel out the program and get to know them. And now, they've had a year under their belt where they didn't play, and now they're kind of all coming together with an opportunity to prove themselves. Last local team I want to touch on, the RMU Colonials, 16-17 last season, 9-9 in the Northeast Conference under head coach Andrew Toole.
Andrew.
Officially Andrew Toole. But they lose Deshaun Burke, who was their leading scorer last season. They bring back a lot of guys. They were a very young team last year and struggled a lot, but all those guys are a year older. So what do we think is the kind of the ceiling and the opportunities for the Colonials?
Well, I think if you saw the game Tuesday night against USC, I think the upper side of the potential is pretty high. I mean, yeah. I'm not sure how where you'd put USC if you ranked the Pac-12. Don't think they're I don't think they're a favorite to win the conference, but they're
solid. They're solid every year.
They're like a middle tier Pac-12 team, and Robert Morris kind of took the game to them. Honestly, I mean, it's not like they sat back and made every three they took or something like that. They didn't win with gimmicky defense. They just played normal basketball and played right with a really talented USC team. I think Andy's a good coach. Especially with the X's and O's part of it. I think you have to be, because he's never going to have a consistent lineup at Robert Morris. It's just the facts of the kids he has to recruit. He has to take chances on guys that might not stay eligible or that might get in trouble. And then on the flip side, when they do stay eligible and they don't get in trouble and they play well, then they transfer up.
Yeah.
So he's never going to have 5 returning starters. He's never going to have 3 or 4, redshirt seniors or something like that. But in fact, he barely redshirts anybody that he can play. But I just think it shows that if you have a good coach and you have the guys that buy into it, I think that's, to me, when I look at the really good Robert Morris teams from when you covered the team, I felt like he got those guys to really buy into what he was doing at a higher level than he necessarily has sort of every year in between.
Oh, yeah, no. I mean, because I think back to those teams. I mean, I think of Belton Jones, who was just, I think, the epitome of what Robert Morris basketball has been under Mike Rice and now Andy, of course. But, yeah, I mean, he's a guy that I think, Andy's a phenomenal coach, and I just think that I think a lot of Army fans can torture themselves by thinking, man, if I were in a scenario, and it wouldn't be good for players, but if you had to sign a 4-year contract to stay somewhere and never leave, you could be kicked. You could be kicked off the team if you did something wrong. But if you had to stay, thinking of some of the teams that they could have had, and the good thing with Andy, with having a coach like him, is they're never going to be bad. They might have seasons where
especially
they're
not
tough conference
no,
schedule. Where they're never going to be worse. I mean, any say I think has 10 teams, they're never going to be worse than 5th or 6th, maybe 7th. And they have enough guys on this year's team who are experienced, who are good. You have Kobe Thomas, who I really like, really athletic guy. Matty McConnell's an experienced player who's a good outside shooter. It's really weird to think he's a senior, but that's just a sign of feeling old at a young age, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I think they'll be good. And that conference is just, it's unpredictable sometimes. The teams that are at the top, just, St. Francis will be good in that league. I admittedly haven't done a ton of research on who else might be great, but, that's an eminently winnable league.
I just feel like every year there's going to be 3 or 4 pretty good teams in that league.
Yeah.
But there's also every year,
there's
5 or 6 teams that just really
just
struggle, that just everybody beats up on. And so, like you said, I don't ever see Robert Morris being one of those. I don't ever see them being uncompetitive in the league while they have Andy. And to be honest, I mean, going forward, if you look at the sort of the hierarchy there, I mean, Robert Morris is a team that is stuck by geography more than ability when it comes to being able to move up to a higher class up. If Robert Morris was in Eastern Pennsylvania, they'd have moved out of the NEC already.
Oh
I
yeah,
think.
no, they'd be in the MAC or or some other like slightly higher league. I mean, it would be. It's. I think what's killing them though is they don't have an on-campus hockey venue. That's what's killing them.
I think they need that.
I do too.
They could be in the Patriot League with Boston University, another great basketball and hockey school.
Yeah. No. That's where Rick Pitino first learned to drop bags, man. It's we were rooting for that.
Definitely. Well, I think RMU. I think they really have an opportunity to be successful in the NEC, and it all kind of depends on. I think they're really going to have difficulty scoring the basketball. Yeah. I mean, they lose Burke, so it's going to come down on Matty McConnell and now the Williams brothers, John Williams and his brother Josh, who transferred in from Akron. It's gonna come down on those guys to be able to run this offense and score points, because you lose your leading scorer, and that's something that a lot of teams struggle trying to overcome. And it remains to be seen if they're going to be able to do that.
Yeah. This is totally off topic. That would actually be a good fit for Army of the Patriot League, a school named after Robert Morris.
I was thinking the same
Colonials belong in the
I was thinking the same exact thing.
It does.
When you mentioned it.
Apologies to RMU fans for not actually talking basketball.
Well, guys, that's going to do it for college hoops. I want to touch on, before we wrap things up here, I want to touch on the NBA real quick. The NBA season, every team's about 10 to 12 games in. Starting to figure out who's really going to be the contenders this year, who's not, outside of the Warriors. But I want you guys to give me maybe a team that surprised you so far, and then we'll get to a team that's maybe disappointed.
And surprised so far, I would say I don't think they're contenders. I love the Sacramento Kings though. They're 6-5. They're not actually like a miserable, incompetent
no, not at all
group through their first 11 games. Yeah, it's just a collection of dudes who like. You watch. I mean, again, I was telling you guys this earlier.
We all.
Like, I know every player on that team pretty much. It's like, oh, Justin Jackson, Buddy Hield, like Frank Mason. I'm like, yo, we're awesome.
De'Aaron Fox, Willie Cauley-Stein.
Yeah, like I don't know if some of you guys are gonna be good in the pros, but we're great college players, and I love that.
It's a college all-star team, really.
Yeah, I mean, I would say them and Toronto in the East, just because I figured they'd be good, but I thought they'd be a slightly improved version of the team that always farts their way to a top 3 seed and then loses in the second round, but. There's something, man, with Kawhi, that team's...
I have been really impressed with Toronto, and that's really been... They kind of have the same core they had last year that was the number 1 seed in the East, but they just improved at the small forward position by adding Kawhi Leonard. Yeah. So I'm really not that surprised that they've been successful. But two teams for me that I've been really surprised with. First one, the Milwaukee Bucks, sitting at 8-2. Giannis has been playing like an MVP candidate. They're second in the league in scoring 120 points per game, and they're doing great on the defensive side. They're giving up the lowest opponent's field goal percentage of any team in the league as well. And they've been impressive thus far. They don't have a lot of shooting, so I don't know how long this is going to keep going for them because there's no one to knock down threes in that team besides Chris Middleton. But I've been impressed with them. And the Denver Nuggets, 9-2, right now at the top in the 2 seed, I believe, of the Western Conference. But young core there that's playing really well. Jamal Murray had 48 the other night on Monday. And Nikola Jokic, he had that perfect game, the second game of the season, where he was 11 for 11, 35-point triple-double. So they've been really impressive, and they've also been really dominant on the defensive end. So 2 teams right there that I think, hey, they might do some damage in the playoffs down the road.
All right, so I'm going to say something that sounds dumb, but I'm impressed by the Warriors.
Yeah.
I just think that sometimes,
they've gotten
even
better.
If you're really good, when you see the Penguins here, I think the Penguins and the Warriors are pretty fair corollary, right? I mean, they're really good players, really good team success. It's just being great for a really long time is really, really hard to do. Yeah. Stuff just happens. Whether it's guys get hurt or a guy just, I don't know, they're not feeling the guy they're playing with now, or, just the personality of a coach starts to wear after time, and whatever it is. Even if you have the best players, it's really hard to be the best team, especially at the beginning of a long season. Yeah. I feel like there are a lot of times where fans of good teams see their team at 6-5 after 11 games and they start to freak out. And I'm like, just relax. They have really good players. They'll be fine. Come playoff time, they'll be like a 2 or 3 seed, and then they'll be in the conference finals before you know it. The Warriors are 10-1. They don't even have DeMarcus Cousins, and they may be better than they were last. It's incredible.
They really do genuinely look better.
Yeah, they do.
And they just in the third year with KD now, and you're right. It is the perfect group that gels perfectly. They don't seem to have any fights in there or anything. Everyone seems to be best friends, and Steph Curry's been incredible. Clay's been incredible. I mean, KD seems like right now like the third best player on that team, just the way that the other guys have been grabbing the headlines. But I mean, you're right. They have gotten better.
Yeah, that's impressive. I'd expect them to be one of the best teams in the league. Obviously, I did not expect them to come out of the gate rolling like a unbeatable juggernaut. Unbelievable.
Now, flip it real quick before we wrap things up here. A team that has kind of disappointed us going into the season.
I'll probably go with the Rockets. I love Mike D'Antoni. I thought for a while he was pretty underappreciated as far as ushering in this era of the NBA. Yeah, exactly. So I've been happy to see him come back and sort of have a bit sort of have a bit of a redemption tour. But I can't say I mind seeing them be bad because this might be an unpopular opinion. James Harden is a pox on the game of beautiful basketball. With his I'm going to initiate contact and draw a foul shooting from 53 feet from the basket.
It is infuriating.
So
It really is.
That is I shed no tear except for Mike D'Antoni about that being bad.
I like James Harden. I just hate that he's been allowed to do it.
Yeah, just change the rules.
I'm fine with like a guy pushing the envelope. I just there needed to be more pushback, I think.
Yeah, agreed. Team that I found really disappointing has got to be the Cavaliers. I mean, they obviously lost LeBron. We kind of knew that they would be worse with not having LeBron James, but I still looked at this team, and with Kevin Love re-signing and him having an expanded role and getting Colin Sexton, I thought, well, maybe in a weaker Eastern Conference they could compete for the 8th seed maybe. But 11 games in, they're 1-10. They fired Ty Lue. Apparently, all the veterans are angry, and they don't think that Colin Sexton can actually play. Reports I'm hearing and stuff, and Kevin Love's now hurt for a few months or so. So everything's kind of been crashing down, and I thought they had an opportunity there to still kind of stay slightly relevant. But clearly that's not going to be the case.
Yeah, and they can try to get Zion Williamson or R.J. Barrett now.
And then they'll be relevant.
Forget trying to be
They'll
good.
be relevant with those two guys.
Absolutely.
That's a couple of pros. I'm gonna stay on the West Coast because that's the only time I get to watch basketball. It's like 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
It's the opposite of East Coast bias.
Yeah, I have an anti-East Coast, but I'm very familiar with the Pac-12 also.
Yeah.
Just because, like my normal work day schedule, like 9 o'clock, put the kid to bed. Oh, I'll see what's on. That's the only time I watch TV. So I think the Lakers have been really disappointing to me. First of all, they're on TV all the time, so I get to see them a lot. But I just think that there's too much talent on the team, and it's not working. The pieces don't fit together.
Such a strange roster.
It really is like
puzzling.
Yeah, their individual parts are better than they are as a whole, and I just thought that I didn't think they'd be this bad on defense. I just thought they'd be better than average. I didn't expect them to compete with the Warriors or even be like a top team in the West, but I thought they'd be. I think it just goes to show partially that the Western Conference is good and deep, and there's a lot of good teams that if you just kind of show up, you lose in a lot of gyms out like that. There's just a lot of good teams out there, but I think that's been disappointing to me. Biggest
thing for them, I think, has to be inconsistency. I mean, there's nights where they look great together. They play as a cohesive unit. There's other nights where they're getting in fights with the Rockets. They were the first team to beat the Nuggets, who were undefeated. And then the next night, they laid an absolute egg against the Raptors the next game. So I think really it's got to be consistency for the Lakers. But that's going to do it for us here on the Corner 3 on Pittsburgh Sports Live in the Beaver County Auto Studios. Of course, always please subscribe. Helps us out and lets you stay updated. And this has been our first episode. We will be back next week. This has been the Corner 3, Pittsburgh Sports Live.